be very clear about where you're headed. And the question I use working with clients to get them focused on where they're headed is, are you satisfied? Or let me say it back, let me ask it a little differently, is what would satisfy you? Not just, well, I want to get it started, I want to get off the ground, I want to be financially successful. That's too vague. What is it you want to do? What timeline? What specifically? How much revenue? How big a company? How big a footprint? What's your market? Be very, very, very clear on all the little things that it'll take to satisfy you, because in the end, getting exactly what you want is what's going to be the ultimate satisfaction in life.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Cary Prejean. And Cary grew up and had a dad who was a doctor that didn't understand finances or taxes, except that he always had to pay too much, which was probably the feeling of most Americans. So Cary went on to get a degree in accounting in college. Lawyer told him not to waste the time doing law school to be a tax attorney, so he got the degree and then got into working in the working world and worked with businesses on taxes and accounting. Worked for accounting companies in Houston, a couple different ones, and then went to work with Arthur Andersen, which was a bigger accounting firm. And then one of his clients he hired him, so worked for an investment firm for a while, and then decided to wanted to do his own thing. Also at that similar period of time, got into the psychology of language as well. And so between those two things, started his own thing, which is what he's doing today, and he'll give us a bit more detail. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Cary.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Devin. I'm glad to be here, man.
Absolutely excited to have you on. So I just gave a 30-second version of a much longer journey, but taking us back in time a bit and expounding on that a bit. Tell us how your journey got started getting into accounting.
Yeah, my father was a doctor, and like most doctors, they don't understand taxes, they don't understand business, and the fallacy is because they make a lot of money, they think they're supposed to know a lot about money, and they don't. Anyway, I had to help him read his tax return. He didn't understand what it meant. He didn't understand how he was paying so much tax. And again, this is after Kennedy reduced the maximum tax rate from 95% down to 70%. So he was paying 70% on a good deal of his income. He just couldn't believe, how much he had to pay. It was a lot. Anyway, he told me when I was in high school, I was helping. He says, if you want to make a lot of money, he said, become a good tax attorney and show people how to not pay all this. And I was like, that's a good idea. It's like, okay, because he was looking for. He went from CPA to lawyer to find some people, and finally found some good people that helped him. But I figured, it's a good way. Okay, if he's willing to pay a lot of money to do that, there must be others like him. So anyway, I went through the whole typical accounting thing, worked for Arthur Andersen, got my CPA, got hired away by a client of Arthur Andersen's. And I guess the traditional view of accounting is always about what's already happened. I mean, I was even told a good accountant is a good scorekeeper. Like, here's what you did last month, here's your tax return from last year, everything's about what already happened. But I saw business owners struggle with, and what do I do with this? What's this telling me, and how do I play the game better going forward? So I went about trying to, like, not just show them the ratio of what they meant, but also give them a good narrative, a good layman's narrative. Is, so, this is what your financial statements are saying about your business. And here's some things I would recommend you improve on. Here's some things you can do to make those improvements. So it became more and more, I guess the more I practiced, the more strategic and long range looking I became. And then, I ran across.
And on that note, so I mean, just to keep with the timeline a bit, and for people, so you went to college, you kind of with that understanding, helping your dad, looking at his tax returns, went to college, got an accounting degree. Lawyer told you don't bother with law school, which was probably good advice. And so then you went into the working world, and I think you started working for a couple accounting companies in Houston. Is that kind of where
Well,
you
no,
started
actually,
after
they
college?
were big. They're both Fortune 500 companies. One is Browning Ferris Industries. I was an internal auditor, right? And then the other one was part of offshore drilling, which was well, offshore drilling company, but I was a project accounting manager for them.
Mm. So now you do that for a period of time, and or how long or between those couple companies did you work?
About 4.5 years.
Okay. So now you work for them, and then I think after that you went and worked for Arthur Anderson, which is I think another big accounting firm. So
Right. It was one of the
it's
big eight at the time.
right. So you have the big eight, and you did that for quite a good period of time. And then at one point, if I remember our conversation a bit before, if we chatted before the podcast, you had one of your clients that come and approached you to kind of hire you to come work for them directly. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Now, what made you decide to kind of go that direction, right? Because up until now, you'd been working for big companies, big accounting firms. You'd had some of that, and to switch over to go work for their client. What was the motivation there?
Well, a lot of reasons. Me and the owner, I got along really well with the owner. He was very friendly. He offered me basically was going to double my pay. Um, there's a lot of reasons to do it. It turned out to be a pretty good experience, and it had me move from Houston to New Orleans.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, it worked out well. But again, he was one of the first ones that I saw that, I was doing, instead of just taxes, but doing the overall accounting for him. And he struggled with, so what do I do with this information? He's the first guy I actually started working with in terms of, well, this is what your financial statement's saying, and here's some things you can do to improve. This is an improvements I suggest you make. And it's kind of a struggle. He was also the first one that I noticed that, because he started the business because he owned the business, he thought he knew best how to run the business. And there's some fallacy in that, for everybody. Because this guy was terrific at sales. He was an electrical engineer, but he had an equipment distributorship. And he was really a smart guy, but he was brilliant at sales. He could sell, anything. And so he understood sales and he understood engineering, but he really didn't understand the whole system, how the process works, what drives what. Anyway, so yeah, he was the first guy that I was practicing on. That was back in the early 80s.
So now you do that for a good period of time, and you make the bit of that transition. You have the opportunity to work for him, and then I think as we talked about at some point, you decided, or remind me, was that the investment firm, or did you go work for an investment firm after that?
I basically started an accounting firm. I left the equipment dealership and started an accounting firm, and ran across these two gentlemen who had an investment firm. And we were talking, we got to be friends and stuff, and they needed somebody to come in and help them with not only their accounting but their compliance, and to actually author some of the private placement offerings they were doing. So anyway, we struck a deal. It worked out pretty well for all of us. I was there for about, 4 years, and got to work with a lot of the clients of that firm in terms of some of their tax planning, some of their strategic planning. And I saw that I had somewhat of a knack for it. So it was out of that I got out and started my own consulting firm.
Got it. So you spun out and decided to do your own. Now, one of the questions is, there is a big difference between working for others, even if you know a lot of these skills in the industry, versus running your own consulting firm. Even though, yes, the outward facing clients, you're going to be offering a lot of the same services. Now you've got to think about everything from finding other clients, to managing your own books, to running the office, to potentially hiring other people if you grow, to getting a business license, to all of the, being the janitor, and all those other things.
Yeah.
And so as you make the transition over to your own firm, how did it go? Was it a great experience? You enjoyed it, loved it, and it was the best decision ever? Or you look back and say, oh, it was really nice when I didn't have to worry about all those things. How did it go for you?
Yeah, all of the above. It's kind of like, another hassle. That's the way I was seeing it back then. It's like another hassle. Like say business license, getting your own office, getting somebody, hiring people, having to deal with people. People are messy, right? I love that about people. People, everybody's got their issues. Everybody's got their private life that you really don't want to see it in the workplace, but it's kind of hard not to bring it to the office sometimes. So yeah, it's a lot of that, a lot of the I didn't know it was this hard. I guess the thought that I didn't know it was this hard. I didn't know it was going to be this much of a hassle. But again, I enjoyed what I was doing, and I just stuck with it. So
now you enjoyed it, you stuck with it, and so bring us a little bit up to where you're at today. So I mean, how long you've been doing it? Kind of where's the business at today, and
yeah.
kind of what's the status?
Well, in the middle of starting my own consulting firm, I also ran across this thing called the Ontology of Language, and I was just fascinated with it. And I took every course I could find, and eventually became certified as an ontological coach. And I incorporated that into the consulting, and that's been that's sort of like been my secret sauce. Is that the current lingo? My secret sauce. Yeah. So that was how many years ago? That was like 45 years ago. And in the middle of that, more recently, I want to say made the mistake, or maybe it's unfortunate. I allowed myself. Well, I went to work for some clients, some consulting clients that wanted me to come CFO full time for them, and the problem with that is the relationship changes. When you're the consultant, you're like, you're the hired gun. You're the guy they're going to pay some money for. They're going to listen. When you become an employee, it's more of you become a payroll liability. You're just one of the many. So I spent about 7 years doing that. Went to work for a few clients, and I'm back out since 2015. Yeah, 16. Anyway, so I've been out on my own. And now I went from having clients in just South Louisiana, because it used to be an in-person kind of thing. Well, now that the technology and COVID, one of the few good things that came out of the whole COVID thing was it shows how much we could work remotely. So now I have clients in Florida, Atlanta, Idaho, California, Massachusetts, but picking up clients all over the place, because you can do this remotely, especially, I mean, you and I talking right here, this probably wouldn't have happened 10 years ago.
No, I definitely agree. So that sounds like, you've had the opportunity to kind of expand as well as pivot the business a bit, and also look at ways that you can reach different audiences and different potential clients, including, doing it remotely, which is definitely, I agree, is one where it's become a much more of a acceptable and a greater opportunity as you look at it with COVID and with other things, as it's forced people to re-examine things a bit. So well, with that, now as we kind of get to a bit of the present day of your journey, the next question is kind of maybe looking a little bit out into the future, kind of where you guys are headed. You take the next 6 to 12 months for you guys. Where do you think you're headed? What's next in store for you?
What's next in store? I really don't know. I don't know where the economy is going to be 6 to 12 months. I think we have some rough patches to go through. I think there's going to be some shaking out of businesses. The other thing I've noticed more recently too is now that I have a much bigger geographic footprint, I'm starting to work with some startups. Some brand new startups. People with all kinds of good ideas. Basically, what they need is they need some structure. They need some money, and see if their ideas will work. And that's different. So I think I'll probably see more of that, more of startups that are looking for help. And I think even the more established companies, I think as we go through some of the economic hard times I think we're going to go through, there are going to be some people that are like, we're good, like I don't need any help, everything's fine now. They're going to be looking for help when the economy goes sideways, and suddenly a lot of what they're used to is disrupted.
No, it definitely makes sense. So it'll be an interesting time as we see how things continue to evolve and to progress. So, well, awesome. Well, with that, so now as we've kind of reached a present day of your journey, and even looking a bit into the future, great time to jump over to the 2 questions I always ask towards the end of each journey or end of each episode. So with that, the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
The worst business decision was trusting people when my gut said not to. It's like, they were like, they look great. They're all, handshaking and smiles, and we're gonna make you rich and famous and all that kind of stuff. But there was something I was like, yeah, just I don't know. There's something about them I don't get. And basically, what my intuition or whatever you want to call it was telling is like, I don't get that sincerity. There's something they're not saying. They look good, or what's the expression? They look good on paper, but there's something behind the mask that's not there. And what did it teach me? It taught me to be, what's the word? Well, skeptical at first, but much more cautious. In other words, the other thing too is to make grounded assessments about who you can trust and for what. I mean, there's nobody, I say nobody, there's probably very few people that you can trust absolutely with anything. But most people we trust in like one or two or three aspects of our lives. Like you can trust some people show up for dinner, show up to go to a movie, but you wouldn't lend them money because you'll never see the money again. So you have to pick and choose who can you trust and for what. And also you have to be real clear about what's at risk.
No, I think that that definitely makes sense. And it is one of those hard ones because at the end of the day, if you don't trust anybody, you're going to be a pretty small company and you're never going to be able to expand or grow or even chase down new avenues. But by the same token, it is one of those that it is hard to figure out who you can trust, how much you can trust them, what responsibilities or other information you can provide them. And so it is always that kind of ongoing balance as to what makes sense with the business. And so definitely makes sense. It's a mistake that can be made, but also a great one to learn from. Second question is, if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Be very clear about where you're headed. And the question I use working with clients to get them focused on where they're headed is, are you satisfied? Or let me say it back, let me ask it a little differently, is what would satisfy you? Not just, well, I want to get it started, I want to get off the ground, I want to be financially successful. That's too vague. What is it you want to do? What timeline? What specifically? How much revenue? How big a company? How big a footprint? What's your market? Be very, very, very clear on all the little things that it'll take to satisfy you, because in the end, getting exactly what you want is what's going to be the ultimate satisfaction in life. So if you can look at that, especially looking out down the road, okay, I want to be here at this mark, I want to be here at this mark, and you may not get exactly there at exactly those marks, but you'll be much closer. And the other part of the experience of the process is that you get to refine it as you go. So even though you might have said, I want to be here in 10 years, as you refine the process, no, that's not really what I'll be on. I'll be a little bit over to the side of maybe a different place altogether. But it's practicing that constantly. What would satisfy me? What would satisfy me? What would satisfy me down to the nth detail that you're going to, and again, what you focus on, you tend to get more of, right? So if you're focusing on what's going to satisfy you, you're going to tend to get more of what's satisfying for you. And out of that comes all kinds of great stuff. I mean, your mood's going to be much more positive, even in the hard times. And stuff comes, you're still going to be ambitious, you're still going to be grateful, you're going to be at peace, you're going to be joyful, which again expands a much bigger horizon of possibilities for you, as well as a much bigger range of action that's available to you in the moment, as opposed to you're resigned and resentful, which both are founded on, and there's nothing I can do about it, which means for the most part, you're not going to do anything about it, but develop a victim story.
No, I think that's definitely a great takeaway and a great piece of advice. So awesome. Well, as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, probably the easiest way would be to go to my website, Strategic Business Advisors, almost messed it up, strategicbusinessadvisors.org is the website you can find my calendar, schedule a meeting with me. If you want to just email me, it's Cary, Cary, at cfoconsulting.co, not com. Those are probably the two best ways.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect up with you, and find out more. It's a great opportunity to make or to have a good connection and to also leverage some great expertise. And so, with that, thank you again, Cary, for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. couple more things as listeners. If you can click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. We want to make sure that everyone find out about all these awesome episodes, and that's the best way to help us to do so. And with that, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again,
Super.
Cary, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Devin.